What's up, guys? What's happening? Going right to the bell today. I had a little nap here before the live, and thankfully set my alarm. And my wife is smart and said, you should get up. Got a live to do. So anyway, right to the bell today because I had to change my setup because I had a thing yesterday here with the kids and the grandkids, and all my stuff is like right on the dining room table. So I had to move it and had to reset it up. So I should have set my alarm for a few minutes prior. But it just shows the years and years of being on stage with who's got an extra cord, or oh shit, my fuse just blew and we're going on stage in 5 minutes, kind of stuff. It's not a problem. Just be calm and don't get too excited. But it can be difficult, especially when you got like 1,000 people screaming, which wasn't too often, but we had a couple where we had that many people. But good to see you guys. Good to see you guys. Words Bloom, you're not really late because I was just getting finished saying that I was almost missing live. So you are completely fine. But appreciate you guys that are here early and here ready to rock. And looks like Misleading Evidence and Donna Lembo, of course. Hitman 23, very cool. Samira Dalvi, very cool. Good to see you. And like I said, in Words Bloom, and everybody here early. That's cool. I hope you guys like my new shirt I got from the merch store. It's kind of funny, a little quick story about that. I ordered one. It was like late at night. And then I went on the website to track it. And it said that there was one going out. The days that the day that it was supposed to be delivered was different. I was like, I wonder what changed. And looked like there were two different orders going out with this shirt in it. So I was like, did I possibly order it twice and didn't realize I ordered it the first time? But anyway, it doesn't look like it. It looks like that it was just something goofy on their end with the tracking. But did show the right package tracking. It just showed an additional package that left like a day or two later. It was just weird. But yeah, the shirt really turned out good. Thank you, Alicia over there, for that. I definitely like the way it turned out as well. I'm definitely enjoying the artwork using the AI stuff. It's really cool because I could never afford to pay an artist every time I had to do stuff. And back in the band days, I mean, I wasn't doing like the album covers because I couldn't do that. But or at least I didn't think I could. I'm not artistic like, drawing and painting. So, graphic art is, yeah, it's a thing. I never was really great at it, but I just made it work. But this stuff is like, this is ridiculous. I mean, you could really do a lot of stuff with just a good imagination. That's what I like about it. So the creativity's got to be there. The idea's got to be there. It's the execution of it that I never was really good at. So, oh, Words Bloom says there's the Canadian Thanksgiving. Very cool. So yeah, the Canadian friends. Love the Canadians. If anything, just for the Trailer Park Boys. I mean, come on now. Trailer Park Boys are amazing. And yeah, my wife and I on our first date, we went to dinner. I picked an Italian place, of course. Francesca, I picked an Italian place and took her to dinner. And then when we came back to get her car, um, we were looking at my TV and my setup there with the way I had it at the time. And she saw that I had a bunch of Trailer Park Boys recorded. And that's when she knew that it was worth something there because I was a big fan. She's a big fan. And so yeah, we enjoy
We
that.
were both at the Randy and Leahy show.
That's right. Went and seen Randy and Leahy separately, but
Yeah.
we were both there when they came through town before we met. But yeah, so it's always a great thing. And but no, it's cool with our Canadian friends having Thanksgiving today. That's really cool. It's very easy to forget um, that other countries do things different, days and stuff. It's just easy to get wrapped up in your own thing. I'm sure Canadians are probably so used to the Americans, since there's a lot more of us, talking about our holidays all the time. And then you guys, you know, like in that instance, I had absolutely no idea that it wasn't just Thanksgiving everywhere. Although really with the pilgrims and all that story, we would assume that it was just for us, but still, I think it's cool that you guys have one too. Very cool. Words Bloom is saying my wife should come on camera with me. My wife does not like doing the camera thing. That's why when she has to cut through to like use the kitchen or something, she's like kind of ducking around. She's got earbuds in, right, shit right across from me, but she's got earbuds in. She's doing her nails. And so I've tried. She's very beautiful, but she doesn't want to come on camera with me. So, but very nice of the many, many things that you guys posted about Pee Wee's passing. It was tough for both of us, but definitely more for Jenny because she was the dog person of the couple here, and but he eventually won me over. Just hanging out every day, he'd come in here with me and hang out under the table, and if I got up, he was up with me and checking things out. So we it was really weird not having him here this week, especially when I was here alone. It was really weird. So, but very very good. So I've been pretty unplugged here lately. I'm seriously trying to find something that interests me about some case that makes you want to do a video. I mean, I'm not just bored with it. And I don't like that. And the book is coming along so good. I just passed 40,000 words. Um, I am cranking. I mean, I am in such a groove. That's part of the problem is I don't want to stop. And obviously, I'm stopping because it's not like I write all day long. I write for usually a couple, 3 hours, and that's usually about it. I could do editing longer than that, but like actually writing, usually only 2 or 3 hours, especially the kind of stuff that I'm used to writing because it's horror, very intense, very intense writing. It takes a lot out of me to do it. So yeah, this has gone a little faster just because it's so much easier to write it. It's just telling the story of what happened to me. All right. Well, Jacob Monster just saw that you were here and got a nice first volley here from Jacob Monster 999. I like that name. Question, Pete. I always wanted to know what is it did Brittany and Dylan do during these 8 hours? I doubt they stayed in that hours. Is it possible they left, came back to call 911? What do you think? A lot to unpack with that one, and huge thanks, Jason or Jacob, for sharing that idea just to get this thing started today. I have a good one that's not related to any case we've talked about here at all. It's the worst act of violence on a school in the U.S., and it did not involve a gun. And I say that because if they flag this live for replays, whatever. I'm not gonna tap dance around certain things. So we'll talk about that later. So, anyway, what did they do during those 8 hours? Well, that's a damn good question, Jacob. I think that's one that's been on most people's minds. I'll instantly turn this to the group. If anybody's got anything they want to add to this, we got Christina just got here. And what do you guys think about Jacob's question? What did they do? Well, I think there's a lot of things, Jacob, I think that they did. I think, first of all, they covered their ass. That was at the top of that list, right? Unless you think that there was somebody else calling the shots and they were just kind of pawns in the game, which I would think, could be very likely, because I don't see either of them as being some kind of, criminal mastermind. Because I don't think they could mastermind a lemonade stand, to be honest with you. So anyway, I think that they were probably being told what to do by somebody, and maybe they were put in charge of, hey, you're supposed to survive this because we need somebody to pass on this story, and we need somebody to kind of be the focus. And two college girls, poor college girls, is the perfect thing to distract everybody. Don't call anybody till noon. Give us plenty of time to get the hell out of Dodge. And they all took off, and then they were forced to sit there and wait. But while they did, they occupied their time with Instagram and every other app that you could think of, and platform to social media stuff. That's what they were, of that age, so they will be all about that. And I think that that there was a lot of things that they were doing, but I'd love to see what some other people have to say about this. Okay, so Christina is saying, I think Ellie staged and cleaned, and then they helped because they could not let it be known that they were shot. Yeah. Coffee just tastes so much better in a Murder Metal Mayhem mug. What do you think? Could I do like product placement ads on my channel? I'm enjoying my coffee with my Murder Metal Mayhem travel mug. See, that might work. Do it from that side. My wife's laughing at me because she knows. I got to digress for one moment. My grandson's 9, and I love playing with, toying with him. He's really smart. So he's known that Papa, that's me, is just a fool and likes to trick him and stuff. And he picks up on it really fast, though. So yesterday, when he was here, I asked him, I said he had to go out to the yard to help me pick a stick that I'm going to use as my new leg. At this stick, I want to help him pick it out. And he said that, no, that's not going to work, Papa. And he laughed at me, and he said, because it's going to skewer my leg. It's going to go into my leg, and it's going to skewer my leg. And I was like, yeah, I guess it kind of would if it was strong enough, to hold my big butt up, But I thought that was funny. Oh, there's my mom. There's Mom. There's Blue Rain 60, just in case. I like that name. And I mentioned Christina. She's here. So very cool. Very cool, guys. So he didn't buy the going to get a stick for Papa's leg, but speaking of Papa's leg, though, I went to the amputation clinic at the at the VA on Friday. And it was really cool. We went there and I met the person that I'm going to be working with. A real nice guy. His name is Nick. He's super cool. And he helped me. They put this thing on my leg that's like a big sleeve, but it's like really thick, or it felt thick, but in all actuality, it's not that bad. But it's got this weird texture. It's almost like gel, and it goes over your leg real snug. And then that's what you put into they call it a socket. You put that into the socket, and then depending on the type of socket you have, it goes in there different ways, and then it closes down so that it's not going to move. And so it's pretty cool. So they fitted me for the they did all sorts, a lot of measurements, and then they took a cast of my leg for the socket so that they can make the socket custom to me, and then it'll be clear. And that's the test one, they call it. And then, there's A.R. Hayes at Convict's Thoughts. Good to see you, my friend. And we got Ray and Nat. Very nice. And so they, I'm going to put this back up on the screen so I don't lose where I was. So then they take that, they make the socket, it's clear. He could see how I'm walking in it as I learn, and then they can pad it where it needs to be padded for me. And then once all that's figured out, then they make me the real one. And that goes pretty quick. Somebody right here in the state does them for the VA, and they get them like in a week or two. He said the whole process typically takes about 3 months for most people. He said every time, it's everybody's different. But with me, I've got 2 surgeries coming up. So there's probably going to be a little bit of lag with me just because I'm going to be down for a while. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And that's what's up with that. So yeah, it's coming. It's coming soon. All right. So I'm sorry that we detracted from what we were talking about. But Jacob Monster is also on that same question about this 8-hour delay. So, Pete, could the reason why it took so long, maybe the perps did leave right away where they were still there, and maybe that's why Hunter grabbed a weapon? I don't know. I don't know if they would still be there that long after unless they were hurt, and I know it's been a question I've heard raised is, was there really a somebody there that was injured that was part of the attack? I don't know. I don't know. It would be a good question. What were they? There's so many different ways this thing could go, and I think that's why everybody's so interested, on how it all went down. But to me, I've always thought there's got to be something quirky about it to have thrown us all off. There's definitely some ideas I've had about having people there already in the house when they got there, hiding in that basement room that nobody seemed to know what it was for. And then that's where the circuit breaker was for the house. That's why I've always thought if I were doing this, I would go in there, if anything, and kill the power to the house. That would eliminate anybody being able to see you. And I know I've said it before about night vision, but they make it so cheap now. I mean, when I was in the Army, we were using it, but it was in its infancy. And I used to drive this tank, and this night vision was like strapped to my head, and it was like pretty bulky. And then you had to see through the window with that, so it wasn't the best situation, but we made it work. But if you had these newer ones that are like real slick, they look like sunglasses almost, and you'd be able to see very well in the dark with that. And then it wouldn't matter if somebody cut the lights on. So yeah, it's there's so many different ways. And you brought up the hunter grabbing the weapon. That was definitely strange, unless he was play acting, to make it seem like he was doing this urgently when in all actuality he was probably there around 8 o'clock in the morning. The way that guy was always at that house, there's no damn way he wouldn't have shown up until right before this started. No, he was there. I think they were all over there getting their stuff together, rehearsing. But I do think whoever did this and told them that you're going to give us an 8-hour head start, so don't call until noon. We're out of here. And then they took off. And then I think one of them abandoned the white car in Eugene, Oregon, where that Elantra was found. That was linked back to Esty, one of the owners of the house, who then ended up selling his properties and disappearing to Colorado. So I don't know. I mean, it definitely makes you wonder. So many weird things here, but somebody else had an idea. Okay, here I see it. Now I get a fair amount of people in the comments, whether it be in a live in the chat or on a recorded video or a replay in the comments about Pav. I have absolutely no problem with that dude. He's reached out to me not that long ago, and he wants to do a collaboration with me, which would be cool. That's about all I can say about it, but we talked about doing something. I don't know if it'll happen, but he did reach out and was complimenting, so I got no problem with him at all. Everybody's got their own takes on it. I may not agree with everything he says, just like A.R. Hayes and I, who are good friends. I mean, there's times where he doesn't agree with me at all, or vice versa. And that's fine. That's what makes the whole thing tick, that we're all different and we all have different ideas we're bringing to the table. But when it comes to Pav and that, where was that? Okay. Braun and Nicholas Mowich. I know that he's been all about Nicholas Mowich. I actually watched the video of his last night, and then I watched one of the day before, but I haven't really watched much content related to any true crime other than like cool old episodes of like Forensic Files and things like that, which I watch that kind of thing a lot. We get a lot of great ideas watching those kind of shows for the writing side of things. Something you never would have thought of. So yeah, I definitely agree with some of what I've watched. It definitely seems like he's figured some of this stuff out. It does certainly appear that way. The only thing is none of us really know, and so somebody may agree with him but may not like his delivery. He's got kind of a cockiness about him, and that's fine. That's like his shtick. That's cool. Just like there's a lot of people, I guarantee you, I know for a fact that they've had him leave because of it. The 666 thing, they just can't deal with it, and they think it's distracting. And I get it. If somebody's like super religious, that would probably be a little weird. But I'm not that way. I'm not doing it for that reason at all. I've told you all that many times. But there are people occasionally that get hung up on that, and I hate to see him go, but at the same time, I do think it's helped me more than it's hurt me. I guarantee you, a lot of you guys probably may not have given me another look if it wasn't for that. Like, wow, what's his deal with the 666 thing? And then go check it out and realize it's just kind of it's fun. It's not meant to be something bad at all. So yeah, I think there's definitely something there to watch if Pav's your guy to learn on, or some of you may watch lots of different things, and not just watch one or two. You may watch all kinds of them. I'm not sure what you do. I know I watch all kinds, but there are a few that I do really like, and I try to watch. All right, let's see here. Let's see. Christina adds, Jacob Monster might be, why would he go grab a knife and then look through the house? Yeah. I do think that in my opinion, the knife was just, when they rehearsed the scene, they wanted to make it seem like that was really his first reaction of seeing that room, when I think that was already long since been done. I think part of the little play they did was grab a knife out of the kitchen, so this way it makes it look like you're scared. I don't know. That would be my guess. Unless he was like making a bagel or something and he grabbed a knife out of the kitchen and went in there and was doing that. I don't know. I don't know. All right, let's see here. Uh, Giddy up. Guessing that Hunter knew there was no threat, picked up the knife to act like he was checking for the perps. Yeah, I agree. I agree. There was no threat at that point. Um, but there was that first report. First report from the scene said there were 5 of them, and one of them was injured and had already left for the hospital. That was the very first report there. Lucky pointed that out on Unfiltered Lucky. That's when I first saw it. Was his, or no, he and I talked about it, and then he did it on his channel. I waited until he did it because I didn't want to. He told me he had this lady's name, the person that did the news, and there was an email thread with her where somebody asked her, was that really the report from the scene? Was, one person had already left for the hospital and was injured. And she said yes. She had absolutely no idea why that was never brought up again, and it never was that day on, So, but she was the first local reporter, first one there at the scene. So I wondered if that was maybe one of the attackers, that got hurt in all of this. And since this whole thing seems to be kind of a inside job, that they were maybe there up until not long before they actually had to call, I'm not sure. Or maybe they were hoping that they weren't going to make it, and they would just expire and then, I don't know, add to the mystery of the whole scene by having another person there. I don't know. I mean, there's too many what ifs, but yeah, that's all really, really good points. You guys are definitely, throwing up some super good ideas. Here was Blue Rain 60. That would be an awesome collaboration. Yeah, I would be down with it. I thought it would be funny is when we come on is that we both have the stocking cap and the sunglasses on. I could dress up like Pav, and I would, hope he would be. He seems like the kind of guy that would be able to take a joke. So because I like to joke around and have fun. Just like I put in one of the lives that I did with Lee from Devil's Advocates, I put a hat on, or he had a hat on, and I took it and I changed it from a Seattle Mariner hat to I Love Moscow PD hat, and that was funny. It was in the thumbnail. It's still out there if you could find it. Be a couple months ago, but yeah, it was funny. So I like to have some fun and goof a little bit. Things be so dreary doing this. It kind of gets to you. You want to just do something that's a little fun. Um, Christina says Pav is a good investigator, a little cocky, but he puts a lot of time in. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a little cocky. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, that's like I said, that's his shtick, that's his thing. Um, Everybody's got that thing. I'd like to think that the way I do these lives and stuff, this is me. This is not any sort of act whatsoever. This is how I am. So I know some people have to turn it up, to do some sort of online persona. Mine is pretty much just what you get. So let's see here. Words Bloom agrees. You and Pav would be great together. Yeah, I think it would be good. Definitely be a good watch. That's for sure. But very cool. Anybody have any other things they want to bring up? Um, yeah, and Words Bloom adds, yes, Pav is a little cocky, but he also has no problem admitting when he's wrong. He did. In the video I watched last night, he did. So, yes, a lot of creators won't do that. I try to do that when I'm corrected, especially if it's something more significant. Like I've been corrected for the simplest of things, little tiny details, and my gosh, I mean, to try to keep all this straight, even with notes, is difficult. So I don't get too worried about that. But if I really do make a mistake about something significant, I'll try to correct that mistake and at least acknowledge it. So very cool. We got new people popping in here. That's always good to see. So I had a topic that I thought would be interesting to bring up because I didn't know if you guys knew about this, but it was in the early days of the podcast. So I would say probably 2018, 2019 latest. I've interviewed him twice, but author Harold Schechter, who's written all sorts of serial killer books. I mean, my gosh, they're all one word titles, like monster and heinous, these different names like that, and they're all for the different fish. I think he did Bundy. He's done all kinds of them. They're really well written books, but they read like a novel. So it doesn't read like a history book. It reads like a novel with dialogue and stuff in it. So it's cool the way he does it. It's distinct. And I interviewed him for a book he was doing on a project, or we had done an interview. He mentioned this, and then when I did an interview with him a year later, he had written the book he had talked about in the first interview, and it was about the worst school disaster in U.S. history. And I thought, well, surely, that had to be like Columbine or, rattling off some of these, and he said, no, that wasn't the case at all. Oh, there's Mark and Betty over there in the UK. What's up, guys? That wasn't the situation at all, that it happened in the 40s or 50s. I've got a Wikipedia article I'll share with you here in a second. And from 1927. So, it was obviously, almost 100 years ago that it happened, but it did not involve a gun. It was all done with explosives. So I'm gonna share that with you. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of, and if you're interested in this topic after we get done, Um, I will give you some ideas of some places you can go to find out more. Wikipedia is usually a good one, just to get a general idea what happened. You could go fine tune it somewhere else because the details could be off, but the general gist of it works. So here we got the Bath school disaster. That's a picture of the school there. I mean, talk about that's brutal. So they had a K through 12. The seniors, the juniors and seniors are on one, or the high school, I'm sorry, was on one part, the story, the part you see. The grade school was in another section that was single story. And so the picture you see here is the part of the building that lasted. The part that was like where we would be standing was obliterated, and that's where the little kids were. So that's what makes this even more heinous, is that it was involving small kids. I mean, anybody's bad, but talking about grade school kids, it's horrible. So Bath, Michigan, May 18th, 1927. The attacks killed 38 children and 6 adults and injured at least 58 other people. So yeah, so it's a terrible story, but it comes up where we have a shooting, and then there's a big push to you know confiscate weapons and all this kind of stuff. But honestly, I mean, that's weapons can be a variety of things. Here's a good example of something that you don't normally see in a school violence situation is planted explosives. This is in 1927, but at the time it was very popular for farmers to use explosives to get big stumps out in their field. And so they would buy this. It was like dynamite, but a little bit less potent than dynamite. And they used it to, go in there, and he went in under the guise that he wanted to save him some money by not having to hire a janitor at the school. He volunteered to do it himself. He was a board member, but his problem was is he was a miser and didn't want to spend any extra money. And him and his wife, they didn't have any kids, so he didn't want to have to give up all his money for this new school they wanted to build. So he was putting up a fuss about that. Him and the superintendent were like arch enemies, and so then they went ahead and bought all this pyrotech stuff that was like dynamite. Like I said, a little bit less potent, but still, he wired up the whole school in the tunnels underneath the buildings the whole way, the entire length of the school, with the intention to bring the whole thing down. And he had it set. He had an alarm clock set to go off at 9 a.m. on the last day of school. So that's how it was set. And at first, the first attacks were actually at his own house because his wife was sick and they were getting buried in medical bills. So he was tired of paying her medical bills. So he thought he would blow her up too. So he set up the house to blow up all his barns and outbuildings and stuff. He had this great big farm. So all that stuff blew up. So all the fire department would go to his house. And then at the same time, back in the town, the school would go up. So now the fire department would be out of town. So that it would take them longer to rescue people. So yeah, this guy was devious. And he pulled up to the school. He drove his truck straight to the school and sat in the parking lot laughing right before it blew up. And the superintendent came out and saw him sitting there laughing, and they went at it in the parking lot. But this guy he had pyrotexed his own truck full of it. So while they were fighting or whatever was going on, he pushed the button and boom, and took him out, the superintendent out, a bunch of other people that were standing there watching, and even some little kid that had survived the explosion, but then got mowed down with this. So it's just absolutely brutal. But it's an interesting story. But Harold wrote a book about it called Maniac, about that guy. Kehoe is his name. But yeah, talk about a wild case. But I would strongly recommend Harold's book about it because I thought it was very well done. So, but I don't know if anybody had ever heard of heard of this case before. So, yeah, Melissa says, good way to hide your evidence. Yeah, that's true. Especially at a time when they were certainly not nearly as advanced as they are now about figuring that stuff out. So when he blew the school up, the big two-story section, the stuff didn't go off. So that's how they survived. And they got up on the roof and up on the top level, and the fire department was able to get them down, with ladders or whatever they had to do. It was a pretty wild affair. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people have never heard of that before. And like I said, when I interviewed Harold about another book he had written, he was talking about this and asked me if I knew the worst school disaster. And I said no. And like in my mind, I'm thinking Columbine, but really Columbine was small compared to some of these numbers. But still, any act of violence in a school is wrong and it's horrible. I'm just pointing out one that most people wouldn't know of, and it seems like some of you are in that camp but just never heard of this before. So, but yeah, there's a memorial there now and everything. There's a big school there now, and some sort of memorial in tribute to what had happened there. Yeah. But the book is fascinating because it talks about different people in the town that were interviewed. And this one lady got like cut in the neck, and she was like 4 blocks away. But a piece of the school, when that explosive went off, a piece of the school, like something metal, went flying through the air and almost killed her because it almost got to the jugular. So she was lucky that it didn't get her. So the book goes into all of it, like what happened like right at that moment, like what was going on all over the town, and then once that moment had passed, then what that moment had caused. And it was really, really well done. Harold's just such a great author when it comes to true crime. If you're not familiar with Harold Schechter, go get any of his books are good, any of them. But the one word title books, those are the serial killer ones. I would strongly recommend getting some of those. The Ed Gein one was really good. The Ed Gein docu-series I've heard about. I had considered watching it because I thought, oh, that'd be cool. Gein is fascinating. Oh, here we got Shell from also from the UK, so very cool. And we got Mark and Betty here from the UK. So we got some people here representing the UK, and that's awesome. That is definitely awesome. But yeah, Gein, the docu series I've been told is very loose with the facts. I mean, they've even gone as far as to put him in some sort of relationship with a girl in the town there where he lived. Never heard that ever. As a matter of fact, his mom told him women were bad, and he kind of scared him away from women at all, other than her. She was like, he worshipped her, and so that flies in the face of it doesn't make any sense unless there's some new information that's been found. I don't believe there has been. I believe it's just a way to color the story a little bit. But, like when you're writing characters, you're not going to want the character to do something that doesn't make sense with his or her character. Not to say that somebody can't do something really wacky that you didn't expect, but something just really out of place that doesn't wash like this to me would distract. It would, yeah, I would never have done it had I written the character like that. So it doesn't make sense to me. I never agreed with that. Let's see here. Was she going to live forever? Possibly. That's what she thought. I don't know. It's it's an interesting question to ask, right? But but yeah, that bath disaster is an interesting story. Very depressing, but shows how a person can get completely unhinged and plan something. I mean, you want to talk about the long game. I mean, this guy planned this out for months because it took him that long to wire it all up at night while he was there cleaning. He would go under the school and do this in the crawl space and stuff under the school. And he was an electrical engineer. That's what it was. He went to school for being an electrical engineer and failed, and then wound up running this farm that I think was his wife's family. And then he wound up running it into the ground because he wasn't a businessman, but he was really good at making electronics and stuff. And then that's when he got this idea with the wiring up the bomb. And then who would take care of him? Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, right? I mean, he just didn't want her to keep racking up bills, I guess. He wanted to end it. And then, I don't know. I think he planned to go to the school and do that with his own truck. That's why he had his truck wired up. He wanted to take him and the superintendent out if the superintendent had lived through the blast, because he figured the superintendent seeing him there, they would get into it when they did. So yeah, it was definitely disturbing. And yes, Melissa says he was devoted to it. He was. I mean, this is a man on a mission, and he even did something. I think it was this case where he was the. Maybe I'm thinking of a different case where he was keeping the record. No, I think he was the person at the school. He was on the board, but he was like the accountant, and he had kept the books, and he had done that religiously for the school. And so right before he did it, like the day before, he mailed the books for the school, the accounting books, to like the state capitol and said, "I'm sorry for what I did, but here's all my books. Everything's there." Like it was like meticulously kept, and he had them all there. He just didn't want them to get destroyed because those were the books he had been working on. So really out there. I mean, really, really out there for sure. So he was definitely devoted to doing some craziness. That's for sure. Anybody else? Anything Idaho? I mean, I'd love to hear something. Give me something from Idaho that's new. Um, I just haven't heard a lot. A lot of still theories flying around and all new. I've seen the names. Like somebody had mentioned some names from Pav that he thinks are involved in this or that did this. I mean, he definitely does the work. I'll give him that. Puts a lot of work in to do what he's doing. But anybody, I guess while I'm thinking about it, want to hit that like button if you haven't already done so. I am right at 15,000 subs, but like day to day, it's like just over, just under, just over, just under. So if you're watching this and you're not a subscriber, please go ahead and do that so that you can, get me up over this hurdle so that every day it's not teetering. It's going to teeter wherever it's at, but let's get it far enough away from it where we're not going to have any problems. All right. So if you would just subscribe, that doesn't cost a dime. It's just hitting a button, and then you get the notifications and all that. But so here, misleading evidence is saying just finished watching Monster again on Netflix. It was so good. I'm sure it was. I've heard it was good, other than on the factual part of his story. So if you're watching the story to get more of a Geen inspired character, doing some stuff that was not done factually, then I think that's cool. But more like, what was that one movie that was supposed to be like, oh, it's escaping me. Um, the two, they were drifter killers, Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole. Um, the Henry the serial, or the wasn't it Henry the serial killer or something like that? Um, that was loosely based on those two, um, but it wasn't factual. But it was good. I mean, it was good. So it doesn't mean that it's bad that it's not factual. It just you need to make sure people know that. But I have not seen it, so I mean, I don't know. That's cool. I'm glad you liked it, though. Glad you liked it. And here's Words Bloom. I appreciate that very much. Says like and subscribe. Also become a member. It's only the price of a cup of coffee. And if you're drinking coffee and you're in the U.S. and you want to shake your hand out, hold your hand out to your Canadian neighbors, then you want to fill your Murder Metal Mayhem mug with some Canadian coffee, and it is some good stuff. Tim Hortons is what I drink, and love to put that in my travel mug. But yeah, I really like that coffee. But it's Canadian, so it's nice to throw that olive branch out there. Let's see here. Let's see what Kim Young says. Have you talked about the fact that Stacy Chapman, or Chapin is what you mean, said she walked to the King Road house the next morning and her son was still there? I thought they were transported out of the house 11:13. Um, no, I haven't heard that. I'm not sure where she. Oh, I mean, she walked. What threw me off was walk to the house because they're not that close. They're in Washington State. So okay, so she walked up to the house and his body was still there. I don't know when they did that because they never showed the bodies leaving the house. There was those barricades up, so you would have to assume that's when it would have been done. But normally they at least acknowledge that they're taking bodies out. You know what I mean? So that this way the people could see them leaving the building. Like, okay, like this is real. Because without that kind of stuff, I mean, you could still fake it with that. I'm just saying that, that's usually what you see. You see, think of Gacy, right? Where they had the tent and everything set up over the house. But then as they were taking the bodies out, they were just right out there in the free world, so to speak. So I'm not sure about that. But here, Kim's got a follow up to this. They stayed in a motel on the 13th. Okay. There's a document that's talking about transport around 9:20 p.m. Interesting. So yeah, it could have been, the day after, in at night. I do find it odd though that they would have left the bodies there that long. I mean, as cold as it was, it was November. I don't know if it would have been cold enough to where it would have been they would have been in the same temperature whether they were in the house or whether they were in some locker somewhere, with the medical examiner. So I don't know about that. That could have been possible. Hey, we're still not done here, and they're not going to be, degrading in this kind of temperature in this house. We turn the heat off. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a good question. But let's see here. Mark and Betty said, Melissa, you will never see a picture of the sheath because it wasn't there. I would agree with you. I don't think it was either. I think that would have been too risky to bring the sheath there because then it might have got some other evidence on it, right? So that would have been kind of funny that they went there to frame him, but then wound up, getting themselves in trouble. I agree. I think that it was never there, that it was just caught up in that evidence fire that they had there at that evidence shed when Kaylee's laptop went up in flames. I'm betting that's where, if there ever was a sheath, that's where it was, burned up in a fire, because I'm just not buying it. When I interviewed a police officer in Australia about this, he did many murder investigations as a federal police officer, which would be like our equivalent of the FBI. He told me that if they hadn't sent the sheath to the lab, that was highly suspicious because there was so little on it that why would you ever run the risk of degrading it to the point where now it can't be analyzed? You would have sent them the whole piece and then they would have examined it on the sheath itself. But if you're trying to set somebody up, then you could gather the evidence and put it in an evidence bag and send it. And then nobody's going to know whether it came from the sheath, a can of soup, or something in your evidence kit that you set up to frame this dude. Now, I used to do, okay, I see another question here. The chat's not moving that fast. I can't go grab it. But I see what you said, Giddy Up. I want to talk about that too. But I don't know. I just, I think it's highly suspicious that the sheath was not there. Now, I used to do, as part of my job before I retired, I used to do inspections of buildings for environmental hazards before demolition. So things like asbestos and lead and stuff like that. I've also done mold samplings. That's what happened to my hair. Just kidding. So we would pick up evidence in these we called them whirl packs. That was the company that made them, but they're little plastic bags that's used for evidence. They come in all these different sizes. We were using them for what we were doing. But if I saw a piece of, say, floor tile and it had glue on the back and I wanted the glue tested, but not the floor tile, let's say, I would send the whole thing to the lab and tell them it's the glue on the back that I want tested. Because in it taking it off the tile, you could then degrade it or damage it or contaminate it with the tile. It's too hard to separate that kind of stuff out in the field. So that's why out in the field, we just bagged it and described what it was supposed to be tested so that they could test that and not all of it. Sometimes it made sense to test all of it, but in some cases you didn't. So anyway, long story short, that always made me wonder if there was that little there. And I had been told, based on my calculations, 18% of what would be considered a valid DNA sample 18%. So we're talking about like a skin cell. That's not a whole lot of material and could very easily be screwed up if you're trying to scrape it off something. To me, that just doesn't even make any sense. So that's why I think that it could have been something like some sort of contamination issue with the way they sampled stuff. So Kim says, yeah, the fire and lab refrigerator, yeah, totally ridiculous. And sending a swab from the sheath through the airport X-ray, which deteriorates DNA. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, Mick, the guy that I interviewed, he said very highly suspicious, not sending the whole sheath. We had a lot of conversation about that. If you're interested in that, if you go to my channel, I have a tab or a playlist for true crime deep cuts. I interviewed Mick on one of those. Those are like an hour long. I did one on DNA and crime scene investigation. So if you're interested in that topic and this interview I'm talking about, you can go hear what he says with his cool Australian accent, which is very, very, according to the females, very sexy. So I used to kid him when he came on the podcast. I used to have him on there for the ladies. We had a lot of fun with that. But now he's got a cool accent and very knowledgeable about the topic because he did it for real about 15 years. Then he switched to a different branch of. I don't want to give away too much, but because he had to do it anonymously when we did this to protect his identity. But he's not doing murder investigations anymore, but he's still in law enforcement, different capacity. So yeah, so that's interesting stuff, I think. But yeah, these suspicious fires. I mean, doesn't it sound like the dog ate my homework kind of crap? I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. I mean, what law enforcement agency keeps their evidence in a shed? I mean, was it hanging next to the hedge trimmers? I mean, like, what? Why is it not kept in the actual police station itself that could be protected and watched? And this could be a huge thing in a murder case. Somebody going to they find out that there's evidence in a little shed. I mean, that'd be so easy to torch up, and that's what obviously somebody did. Now, whether it was a suspect on another case or the police themselves, I mean, I question those people all day long. There's nothing they've done that I feel has been very up and up. Everything they've done has been just crazy, shady, shady. So we just passed an hour. It's an hour four. I usually go an hour and a half. So we'll keep this at an hour and a half. But so far, really good discussions. I like hearing you guys your take on things. But yeah, it doesn't make much sense to believe that they would have been, you know, scraping this off a sheath if there was already that little there. So, but Mick talks a lot about DNA shedders, how men shed more DNA than women, how just being in the room sheds DNA, and how Koberger's DNA could have easily landed on that, especially with it being a transferable item. So, something you could easily take away or plant is not even counted in Australia. Same with a lot of countries throughout the world. So Melissa's saying she thought that the lab was driven to the lab in Texas, and that's possible. I remember, I know the Offram labs there in Texas was the one. So that's what I thought they would have driven it there. I think the person that said that was just bringing up a possibility of, if you're taking evidence around, you could be putting it through X-ray, and then this way there would be, the possibility of something getting screwed up with it being X-rayed. I think that's a valid point. Yeah, this one always confused me too, Melissa. Remember when the DNA came back from the FBI double in size? That was very strange because, yeah, I mean, and they wouldn't show their work. They wouldn't show how they got to that, what happened, but they don't have to because they're the FBI. So that's the problem is, you can't get any information out of them because they're just going to give you the middle finger and say, we're the FBI. That's why I, questioned, this whole thing from the get go is why do they not turn this federal? Then we wouldn't have known anything. Just kept it federal. Personally, I was wondering if feds thought that locals screwed it up so bad that they didn't want their name associated with it, so they were kind of distancing themselves from it all, which is certainly possible. Which is certainly possible. So yeah, very very good. Um, yeah, this Mark and Betty, this is a good one. The tip about BK from somewhere. You know, there's some questions of where his name first appeared. I've never heard one that sold me 100%. I've heard some interesting ones. I know I had one for a while thinking about his involvement with the Pullman PD and interviewing for the job. And maybe that's where they found out about him and that he was a little quirky and a little strange and lived by himself. That could have easily come up in an interview. And then they would have known stuff about him and then could have maybe, you know, sold him down the river, so to speak, when they needed somebody to take the fall. I don't know. Oh, there's my friend Ray McFalls. What's up, Ray? Good to see Ray. I'm just scanning through here to see if I missed anything. Saw one about reading through these. I wished that's the one thing about doing a live when you're just one person is you can't read everything, and sometimes you miss stuff. So yeah, I think there's a lot of questions about that DNA evidence. A lot of questions. Um, the thing is that the guy that interviewed him in Pullman that did not give him the job, he left the Pullman PD right after that and then got a job at the WSU police as the chief there. And then they were the ones that found the car in that parking lot. So what does that tell you? That's why I thought that was a connection. But I don't know. People don't agree. But I thought there was something there. But I mean, if it was a setup, why in the world did you go through something so elaborate like that? It had to be a cover for something else, right? Something else that had happened that they needed to take the eyes away from it and focus it on something different. I mean, I guess that's possible, but it just seems like that went far beyond what was necessary. So it'd have to be something really, really big, you know? So Tony's asking why Pullman, why would Brian be singled out by Pullman? The only reason I suggest that is he was interviewed for the job to do his internship there for his PhD. So he was going there for the cloud-based forensics. My question is, did he tell them too much? And did they think the last thing we want is some guy that's really good at finding evidence on cell phones and stuff coming here because they had gone through so much drama, like people getting thrown in jail, like bad stuff they were doing with suspects, SA, all kinds of bad stuff. So when he came around, they were like, "No, that's fine, thanks, but no thanks," and that just put him on somebody's radar. And Pullman and Moscow, they worked together on cases before, and that maybe they had some kind of deal where, if you needed somebody to, look bad, we've got some potential here with this guy. I don't know. There's certainly holes in that story, but it just makes me wonder that why the guy that interviewed him from Pullman went to WSU, and then WSU is the one that found the car, and makes you wonder, was that how they knew about it, was from him? But your question of why him is certainly valid. I agree. Yeah, Mark and Betty says, that Elantra found in Oregon was involved. I agree. I mean, there's no way that car had nothing to do with this because, it was owned by a woman who used to work for Dan Estey, and Estey was one of the two owners of the King Road house. So that's certainly suspicious. And I think, too, that Demetrius's brother drove an Elantra. So who knows? That could have been his car or somehow involved with that. So it's certainly possible, right? So I agree that I think it had something to do with it. I think the state SG out there in the media saying everything he was saying on purpose to specifically tank the jury pool or taint the jury pool. The whole thing was a sham. I mean, it's certainly possible that he had some other motives there, but what, I don't know. He's very suspicious. Um, he just doesn't really add up. He seems like a fake. Again, talking about characters in a book, that's just how I look at things. So I guess that's part of me. But he doesn't seem like he makes sense as a character. Like, for example, based on all the shit he was talking before the trial or before any of the finality of it all, when it came to his sentencing and he could get up there and say anything he wanted, I was expecting him to just come unraveled up there. But maybe he did it that way to avoid becoming unraveled and looking silly. But I thought he was going to use that opportunity to completely disintegrate the police department, which he should have done. That's why I wonder, was this thing even really real? And somebody had posted, could this have been some kind of scam? I know I did a video on it called the Alive Theory of what if they were all in witness protection programs and all that. It's certainly possible, but it is interesting that this far down the road, you've heard nothing. And that's pretty rare to keep something that big a secret for that long, unless the people that have the information are either not living or they're hushed up in another way where you feel confident that they're not going anywhere. Probably like a self-destruction thing where if they went to the cops, they're implicating themselves in the whole thing. So the mutually assured destruction type stuff. Very, very interesting. Any other topics we want to talk about? Boy, it's amazing that And I'm not saying this in a negative way at all. People are just still really super interested in this case. I would love to do a video on this case or anything about, a true crime case. I'm just having a hard time kind of finding anything that's interesting to me, which is why I like doing the serial killer story hour, because that can be done, on any killer from the past. So there's a banner there. It's got the information. Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Central. I missed this last week. I did post it on the community tab. That was taking this week off due to everything with our dog, and just to kind of free up the schedule. So I will be back at it this Tuesday doing Joe Nasso, which is a good case in California. The list killer kept a list and the police found it in a hoarder house. It's a wild story. It's a good one. So we'll do that one on Tuesday. And those are just 1 hour, and it's just serial killer story hour and live with me. So there's that. Also, if you're wondering, how can I get one of these cool serial killer story hour shirts? I got a hat over there on the piano. You can see the hat. Got this tote bag that I bought that's great I'm using it for all my extra cords and stuff here where I sit at the table, so I don't have them scattered all over the table like they were. Um, but very lot of options with different logos I got on there. But if you're interested in that, you can go to tpublic.com/user/murder mental mayhem, or just go to tpublic.com and search for Murder Mental Mayhem, and boom, you'll find it. I've also linked to it many times off the YouTube channel. I'll try to remember to put it in the description for this. I don't think it was there when I looked earlier, but I forgot to. I should have just done it there while I was thinking about it, but I did not. So yeah, it's a really cool store where you can get all the merch. Actually, why don't I do this while I'm talking to you? I'll pull up the T Public stuff, and I'll show you the store. Okay, here we go. I'll share this with you. So there you see our merchandise page on T Public. The serial killer story hour shirt. All the shirts are cheap right now. They're doing a sale this weekend. They do these sales pretty often, but 35% off site wide, no matter what design, not just my designs, any of their designs. But if you go to our page and get one of ours, you get it for $16. I mean, that's a good deal for a shirt. But check this out, which is what's really cool about this site. Is here's the shirt on the design on a black shirt. You can get it to fit a male or a female. You can fit or pick from 9 different styles: heavyweight, premium, tall, V-neck, tri-blend. I mean, you can go crazy with it. I just use the classic one. Then you got sizes small to 5X, which is really nice. And boom, and it's super easy to order them. And then let's say you like that, but you want it on a different shirt. Well, then just pick a different color, and you could put it on any color you want. You could even put it on a tie-dye shirt if you want. All right. You can do whatever you want, which is very cool. And what's nice too, if you go all the way down, I don't know where it was at, it shows you what else you could put it on. It might be because I put the tie-dye version on, because I don't think they could tie-dye everything. Give me a second. I'll figure it out. There's asphalt. I love that color too. That's a good one. Okay, so here that shows you all the different designs you could get it on, or things you get on a hoodie, shorts, tank top, hat, sticker, mug. And you click on, let's say, the mug, and then you could look at it up close, see what it looks like if you like it. You got the travel mug, which is super cool. They've got them back now. That's good because the travel mugs are nice. So you can get all kinds of stuff here if you're so interested to do that. All right. Let me get my. So there's that. Let me. Okay, it's not sharing anymore. Okay, good. Let's see. If you want to join the channel, got 2 tiers: the Horns High Club $1.99, Mayhem Squad $2.99. Appreciate all of you that are members of both. You guys are awesome. And Donna Lembo is, of course, the moderator in chief. She's also the captain of the Mayhem Squad, so she's out there doing her thing, and we appreciate that, Donna. And if you want to help for free, just as simple as like the video and be a subscriber. And if you want to join and help out, do the membership. It's not very much, and I try to do as much extra content as I can. So there's that. There's that. All right. Well, I want to give you guys ample opportunity if anybody's got anything they want to talk about. Donna put the link to the T-shirt in the description or in the chat. Thank you, Donna, for doing that. And Kim's got to go back to work, so have a good day at work, Kim. And Mark and Betty, the Alistair Wilson doorstep murder in North Scotland. I'm not familiar with that one. Pete Alistair Wilson, or is it you're saying Pete Alistair Wilson? I'll figure that out. But I'm not familiar with that one, so I'll check that out. Alistair, such an English name. It's so cool. Yeah, the English just very, very cool names and stuff. Names of the towns. I love the names of the towns. Canada's got some great names of towns too. Definitely some good stuff. All right. Anybody else have anything they want to discuss? Let's see. Yeah, Kim's point of who's ever seen a judge allow clapping in a courtroom. Yeah, that's ridiculous that even went on. That's why that whole thing seemed very, very fake to me. I know my mom, when she watched it, and at that time, she hadn't really followed anything on this case other than watching these lives just to hang out with all of us. And she said that she thought it seemed fake just watching it. So that's interesting that somebody that wasn't real familiar with the case would have picked up that Dylan seemed off. The crying didn't seem real. It just seemed very staged, very fake. And so I think she was right. I think that a lot of BS going on with that case and that whole situation. So interesting that it seemed fake. Green River Killer. Wow, Jethro Troll. Girlfriend, your friend's girlfriend was a victim. That's horrible. Yeah, Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway. He's a trip. One of his relatives lives here where I live, in this town. He's like a nephew, like a great nephew or something removed, but his last name's Ridgway, spelled the same way. But he is related, but it's some distant relative. But yeah, what an awful case. I mean, he had a stupid high body count, somewhere in the 60s. I mean, those are like Chikatilo numbers, and Chikatilo was just wicked. in Russia. But that's another case that would be a good one for the Serial Killer Story Hour. Andre Chikatilo. The only problem with him is you'd have to bleep out half of it. I mean, it'd be really hard to do it without getting into stuff you shouldn't be talking about, and especially involving kids and stuff. So that might be just one that would be too tough to do in that format, just because of that. I'm just thinking out loud now. So yeah, the Melissa says that Hitler was part of the committee that chose that venue. You know, I wouldn't doubt it. These guys were all intermingled. And that's why this case seems like an abomination, because it was conceived by all these people that were related to each other in the political and power structure there in Idaho. So it's very, very just disgusting, this whole thing. This case is bad. There's a lot of bad things about it, and that's why, like I said, I've been focusing on the book here lately, because my energy needs to be in getting this done. But I've been struggling with just coming up with a good topic to talk about that interests me, because if it doesn't interest me, I don't want to do it. And I've been trying to do some Idaho 4 because I know you guys want to hear that stuff, and I just haven't seen anything that's just really jumped out at me. But I'll look back through this chat when we get done with this and see if any of the ideas that you guys have thrown out there will kind of get me off my dead rear end and get a video done on it. But see, I was going to do one on the Mark Sanchez case, the football player, but so many people have done them, and I'm not geared for like breaking news type stories, so I don't know. But it would be an interesting case to talk about. I just know that not a lot of people are going to watch it, And the problem is if I'm putting out videos that not many people are watching, then YouTube is like, wait a minute, what's up with this guy? Nobody wants to watch his videos anymore. And then I'm out of the algorithm, and the people are going to be real hard to find my stuff, which means, the channel could die, So I'm trying to avoid problems like that by at least keeping some content up there. But I enjoy doing these lives with you guys. So I'm hoping, that I can keep doing those. The Pixie Stick Killer. Yeah, that would be a good one to do. I've heard of that case. Ronald Clark O'Brien. That's where the whole be careful with your candy comes from, isn't it, on Halloween? Is that guy? I think you're right. That's a good idea. I am thinking about I've got a couple of short stories I've written that are real spooky. One's called Long Dark Hallway, that I did an audio version of, that I was thinking about releasing as an audio, just audio only, but you could hear me read one of my stories for Halloween and do a few of them because it's Halloween. So that might be something I'm going to do just to get some good stuff, content out there. But I've done 2 full books, audio versions of them. So they're on Audible. If you use Audible or iTunes or any of those, you can get it, or Amazon. You can get the audio book there if you want, or you can order it from my site. It's a direct download, and you can have it that way. For the last book I did, Creation of Chaos 4. So yeah, so I'll be doing some of that here with it being October. It's weird not doing a bunch of appearances. Normally I do a lot of them around this time of year, but not quite ready yet. But I think next year I'll be good. I'll have my leg, and I'll be kicking butt like usual. So, all right, guys. Well, I see it's an hour and a half, and that's my rule. So we're going to cut it here. But good to see you. You'll see me Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central for Serial Killer Story Hour. And have a good week. And I'll talk to you later. Thanks for attending.
Yeah. I've heard it all before. It's just the outro and I'm out of here. If you did, you wouldn't be loving this sick, weird groove. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment to help us get out to more. Smash that like and subscribe before you go. You must be some high achiever to watch this whole thing. Copyright 2025 by Horns Hot Productions.